All right. Can you hear me, bud?
I can hear you great.
Oh my
You
gosh.
look good too.
Yeah, thank you, brother. It seems like we just did this, man.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, it
I'm,
was
I'm
10 minutes ago.
I'm loving this. The modeling series, part two with my man Kevin. If you don't know who Kevin is, you can Google him. All the information we'll give it at the very end of the event. Kevin and I met last year in January. I was doing a speaking event for his company, Hub in SoCal. And my gosh, we just created an instant relationship, bonded really well. And now here we are in 2000, staring down 2025. And we were thinking about in our industry, in the insurance industry, I coach that industry very much, as a lot of people know. This is the time of year, right? Renewal season. It's the time to reinvent
Mhm.
yourself a little bit, but it's also time to reassess kind of where you're at. So I know sometimes in Kevin's role as a producer, broker, entrepreneur, consultant, he's got to make some tough decisions, and he's got to also make some tough conversations. So that's what today is about: having tough conversations. And that's what spurned it. Was we were literally on a session last week, and we are talking about how sometimes it's hard, but that's what you do when you're a consultant, a true
Mhm.
consultant. You have a confidential relationship, but you have to deliver the tough conversation. So before we get started, we're going to get into a bunch of tips and some thoughts on this. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this. So just high level before we get into the weeds of it.
Mhm.
This time of year, high level, having tough conversations. I mean, you've got years and years and years of having these tough conversations. Give us the high level on it from your viewpoint.
Yeah, Mike, I think you were in like fifth grade when I started in the business. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of practice, honestly. And, delivering not so great news is never easy. And so, but the more practice you get, obviously, the better you become at it because you learn by learning what not to do. And I don't know who to credit with this, but somebody once said the shortest distance between 2 points is an awkward conversation. And so, we get to have a lot of those. I mean, in my business, in health insurance and in healthcare, it's a continual upward trajectory. And so, healthcare continues to climb, uh, pharmacy continues to climb. It defies the laws of supply and demand. It just continues to go up regardless of how much we do or don't consume. And so, for me, getting as much data together as I can before having that conversation is very helpful. So people feel like, hey, I'm in this with you, and I'm not just coming out here and dropping the bad news. Because when they see their health insurance consultant or broker coming, they know an increase 9 times out of 10 is probably coming their way. The question is it small? Is it big? Is it in between? And this year in particular, and the last 2 years in general, with the supply chain issues and inflation, it's really impacted the healthcare space. And so we're seeing a spate of renewals that are mid-single digits. I mean, higher than we've seen probably since the Clinton administration, where we had back-to-back-to-back years of 15 to 20% increases. This year, you might see an increase, some outliers, 25, 30, 35%. They're not normal and they're not frequent, but we're going to see them more than we've ever seen them before because of all those aspects. All the rising prices of the cost of healthcare directly impact the cost of health insurance. And so we're going to come out, we're going to talk to our clients about, hey, what can we do to mitigate or eliminate those things and not necessarily reduce benefits? How can we make this a win-win? And we're in it with them. And so how do we create that formula?
Mhm.
So they know we're not just going to drop them on their desk and say, hey, you know, we're not going to leave them to figure it out
Yeah.
is the end result.
I was thinking about you today. I know we were prepping for this, and I got a call today from my accountant. And you know that feeling when you see the number come through? There's
You
an
said
initial,
accountant and I got that feeling right
yeah,
then.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah. Right? You get that reaction. It's like, is it good or is it bad?
Mhm,
There's like that little question mark in your head. And I think a lot of, I mean, what you do, it's very similar. Like you can be, I can see, no, we're friends. So I see your caller ID. It's not the
mhm,
same feeling. But when you're talking to your clients, just like my accountant calling me, there's a certain initial reaction that you get when you see that
mhm,
caller ID pop up. And the more you have, trust, rapport, and the people know you have their back, hopefully they get that positive feeling like, hey, Kevin may be calling me with some bad news,
mhm.
but I know he's got my back. He's doing everything he possibly can to, to protect the company, to keep the costs down and everything like that. But I was wondering about your thoughts on that because you probably get the same thing when you see a caller ID come up. So you ever think about that? Like, who is Kevin on the other side of that phone? What's your brand when you're picking up the phone and calling your clients?
I'm hoping it's the latter, not the former. You know what I mean? That look in the rearview mirror. I think we've talked about that before, where you see the CHP behind you, and it's like, uh-oh, am I doing the speed limit or am I going 20 miles over? And so I'd like to think that when they see my name popping up, it's, oh, Kevin's calling, he's probably got some good news, or he's got a strategy and he wants to talk to us about it, or maybe he just wants to, say, hey, you guys want to get together, blow off some steam. So I'm thought of in that way. I'm bringing solutions. It's mostly positive. So even when the bad news lands, they know I've got their back because, we do things on our team that probably most of the market is not doing in the way we structure health benefits. And there's a crew of us out there, and you can see it on LinkedIn, people that are doing new and different and innovative things, and not just saying, hey, these are the plans that are filed and this is all we can work with, and this is the best that we can do. And if you say I'm doing my best, then you're probably not doing your best. At least that's the way I look at it. And so we like to make sure we're showing clients alternatives every time we sit down so that they do feel like, hey, they've got my back. So they've got the opportunity to say, yes, no, maybe, let me think about it, as opposed to, we give them the opportunity to make the decision instead of just saying, oh, Mike's never going to like that, so we won't even waste time showing it to him. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to let Mike decide.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's how we couch it most of the time, because I'd rather come with too much information than not enough information. And then they hear it later on from another source and go, why isn't my guy showing me that?
Mm-hmm.
I've won more business over the years with that strategy, I can tell you, where we were showing them a strategy and no one else showed them. And whenever I hear somebody say, how come my guy or person or consultant or broker
Mm-hmm.
didn't show me that? I've never heard of this. Those are music tunes to my ears. I love hearing that from people.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, that's great. That's one of my favorite when I'm all about the power of questions, right? Power of
Hmm.
questions. I like to pride myself on asking people provoking questions. I
Hmm.
don't remember where I said this years ago. I used the word provocative, and
Hmm.
the audience didn't take well to that. Like provocative doesn't have the same tune. And I said, think about the base word. It means to provoke, right? To
Hmm.
provoke a thought, not provocative in the way that a lot of people think in their brain. But when you
Hmm.
can think about like you want to touch people, you want to move people, you want to inspire them, you want to
Hmm.
agitate. That's another word that gets people rattled up. Agitate just
Hmm.
means to shake it up. It's like you and I learned this in chemistry in high school, right? You put two chemicals in a beaker, you
Hmm.
shake it up. It's two different chemicals that create something completely new. So you as a human being are not going to change your DNA. Who you are is who you are. It's your identity.
Hmm.
But for us to come in as consultants, sometimes you have to touch, move, inspire, agitate, but provoke. That's a tough thing. And that
Hmm.
provocative approach is something that it's not fun, but that's why we're having this conversation today about
Sure.
how to have tough conversations. So let's get to that. You mentioned strategy. Give me like what's your tips? Give me like one or two things that you do when it comes to okay, I have to have a tough conversation. Like whether it's mindset, actual technique, scripting, like what's your technique and how to deliver that message?
So my technique is usually to come with as much data as I can come with, and believe me, if you're an employer that's got 150 or fewer employees, you probably don't get a whole lot of it. So we do have alternate sources that we employ to make sure that we can go out to your office and say, hey, look, you know, they will supply us with large claims information. So let's look at that and see, what they're reserving for those large claims and whether they're on base or whether they're off base. And I'm backed up by an underwriter that works for us and says, hey, these guys are pricing you for last year's claims. We think it'd be wise to go out to the market and test it based on the information we have here. And then it might be a year like this year where everything just seems high. So then it's okay, what are we going to do to mitigate that impact? And let's look at alternative plan designs. So, do we want to look at some type of alternative funding, whether it's using a high deductible plan as sort of a reinsurance vehicle, or whether we want to go fully self-funded and use actual reinsurance and a third-party administrator and show an employer why they can do that even though they've only got 100 employees or 150 employees and they think they're too small. Because once again, I get that comment, well, how come my consultant has never showed me this? Well, they think you're too small. That's why they haven't ever showed it to you. And they didn't ask you, what's your appetite for risk? How do you feel about paying less money to the insurance company? Did you know your employees don't use your health plan 50% of the time statistically and 80% of the time? And I can show them the figures that back this up. These studies have been done by the Kaiser Family Foundation. And of the employees that do use the health plan, 80% of those remaining use it for less than $1,300 a year. So you're really paying for the frequent flyers when you get a rate increase. And so it's like, well, let's leverage the non-frequent flyers or the non-flyers. And design a health plan around that, and let's use the law of large numbers to our advantage
Mhm.
and still provide a very, very comprehensive package of benefits. So again, I give them the opportunity to say, no, we're not down with that. That's too much risk. We don't want to talk about it. Okay, well, at least I've put it on the table and I've let you decide what's right for you.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm going to make recommendations and they can take them or they can leave them. It's just my job to present them. You're an attorney, Mike, right? You give your clients advice. They could take it or they could not take it. It,
Mhm.
it and the difference between taking it and not taking it could be huge in
Yeah.
one form or another.
Yeah, I always think about your doctor, your accountant, your lawyer. As I mentioned, my
Mhm.
accountant, people like you need them in your corner. I mean, it's a necessary thing to have. We may complain about insurance claims and policies being high or increases you have to give out or have to
Mhm.
pay my accountant X amount an hour just to get them on the phone for 10 minutes. So, I mean, that's just the reality. It's a necessary thing. But the
Sure.
one question I think that I would want to know from you when it comes to having tough conversations, especially in your line of work, because I can imagine a client easily putting it on you and saying, I'm firing you, Kevin, because you're giving me bad news, even though that has nothing to do with you per se, assuming
Mhm.
you hit the I's, cross the T's, and you're getting the data, to your point.
Mhm.
What's your biggest pet peeve when it comes to having tough conversations? And I'll tell you mine in a minute. I want you to go first.
Well, my biggest pet peeve is they think one size fits all. We're all alike. One broker's the same as another, which I can tell you is patently untrue. And so when we do get those conversations where people have said, you know what, I'm firing you, or you know what, I'm putting you out to bid, that's their way of saying, I distrust what you're sharing with me and I need to verify it through another source. And if I can verify it, well, okay, then maybe I'm fine with it and maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm going to find out I just like Mike better than I like Kevin. And even though I'm going to be dealing with the same market, I'm just going to make a change because I want to make a change.
Mhm.
And so we've lost business over the years throughout my career just because the relationship, we just didn't vibe, we just didn't fit. And you can always tell as hard as you try, no matter what solutions you bring to the table, sometimes client and advisor don't fit together, and that's okay.
Mhm.
That's okay. I'd rather find that out early. I'd rather bring someone a solution and they'd say, you know what, I don't like your style. I don't want to work with you. Thanks, I appreciate your time. But I'd rather find that out at the front end than 2 years into a relationship.
Yep.
And so we try and make it a barrier to entry to do business with us in the first place because we're not going to be conventional. We're not going to be bringing the same solution as everybody else. I mean, the solution we technically bring typically is not what you'll see about 80 to 90% of the time from a typical broker.
Mhm.
That's what I like about what we do. If everybody were doing the same thing, it's just a beauty contest between broker A, B, and C and how many value adds they can throw at you, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you can buy that Genesis in three different places. So why would you go to this place as opposed to the other two places? It's the same car with the same features and probably the same price. It's the experience, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to make the client experience worthwhile and they feel like we value them and we're leaving no stone unturned when it comes to strategy and how we're putting your plans together. And that we are truly different than the people we compete against
Yeah.
because people do get complacent.
Yeah. That's good. One of mine, I know as a speaker and coach, a lot of times in my business, and you know this, I'm involved with Vistage, and I know you are as well. You have feedback forums, right? You have a guest speaker
Oh
come in,
yeah.
and at the very end of the meeting, if you give feedback, not just on the meeting itself, the location, but the speaker, the guests. I think it's in your world, it's 1 to 5. I think when you get 1 to 5, and in my
Mhm.
world, a lot of times it's 0 to 10, and it really always disappoints me when I see a low number and I get no feedback, right? It's just
Mhm.
a like 0 to 10, a 4 or something, right? But there's no, and
Right.
there's always a section for notes. Like my thing is, if you're gonna give me a low number for whatever reason, I know my average, by the way, my average on a 10 scale is 9.1. I've done this for
That's awesome.
25 years, 9.1. So I know that point 0.9, I'm just not gonna satiate. I
Mhm.
look a certain way. I remember one lady was nice enough. Uh, because I ended up becoming friends with her after the fact. She gave me a really low score on a feedback form, 0 to 10, and she wrote in the notes, which I appreciate that feedback. She said, "You remind me of my ex-husband." I'm like, how can I do? At the time I had a goatee,
Can't
being
be
bald.
helped, right?
Yeah, I'm bald, right? So I can easily see like someone's on stage trying to give you a message, whether it's motivation or whatever. You can't see through the messenger because of whatever, but at least the feedback was honest. And that's one of the things I wanted to make sure I convey today with us is whenever you have to have tough conversations, you have to always check your operating point. Where are
Hmm.
you coming from? If you're
Right.
coming from a place of love, authenticity, right? Genuine care, compassion, those are the elements I think of. Then it's okay to give that feedback. But if you're coming from ego, pride, get over on, win versus lose, right? That there's no place for that feedback. And people feel it. People feel like, hey, you're telling me that to make me look bad. You're telling me that because you want to look better than me. Or, or there's ego pride attached to it. So when you look at feedback, I always say, check your head, right? Do the whole
Hmm.
checkup from the neck up and say, where am I operating from? I I I guarantee you, at least once a week in coaching, I come from a place where I'm checking myself, going, okay, I'm not in a good mental spot right now. I'm aggravated. I'm upset. I'm not coming from the right operating point. That's what I call it. If I operate from a different place, sometimes that means slipping on it, not sending
Hmm.
that email, right? Put it in the draft, save it, come back to it tomorrow. Maybe you're in a different mental place before you have to give, that bad news. So I wanted to ask you about that a little bit about mindset, because we talked and you and I did a lot of research. I referenced, some of our notes, everything from, good honest feedback. It promotes growth, improving relationships, builds trust and transparency. It prevents bigger problems later. I mean, there's some of the big bullet points if you research the benefits of having tough conversations. But tell me about your mindset. Yeah, you're going to have to deliver the bad news and you're going to have to, do your job essentially. But what's the mindset for you that works?
Well, my mindset today is a lot different than it was 10 or 20 or 30 years ago because, when you're a freshly minted new sales professional, you don't want to tell anybody no.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're always thinking of how do I get to the deal? And so your tactics don't come from probably as pure a place as they need to. And so it's taken a number of years for me to be comfortable with sitting down with my prospect or my client and being unafraid to say, no, I can't help you. I know every solution there is for this possible problem or issue, and you can't you can't get around this one. You're going to have to face it and deal with it. Now, I can probably make it less painful than some of my other contemporaries. I said that's the best solution I can bring, but be unafraid to say, look, you're in a spot where I can't help you. Here's what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And again, come with the information and the data. And some people are going to look at you and say, you're saying no to me? You're saying no. I'm not used to hearing no. I'm used to hearing how. And I'm a how kind of guy, believe me. So I don't like telling anyone no. And I love it when I run into a situation where there's lots of hows and my contemporary has left it off the table just because they didn't want to work that hard. That's where we come in, we scoop it up, and we can save the day. I love being the good guy, but I don't love it more than telling the truth and saying you're in the best possible position. I don't know that we could really improve where you're at. Now, if you're unhappy with your current advisor for some other reason and you feel like you're just not getting the most out of them, then we can have another conversation. So I try and keep it at the forefront of whatever I'm doing, whenever I'm doing it. What's my highest and best place to work with this person? Does do I feel like I'm connecting with this person? Can I see myself working with this person for the next 3 to 5 years? Because if I can't, I could do my very best work and they're probably not going to appreciate it. And it's going to be a miserable relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, not everybody fits together. And so again, I've got to look at, am I a good fit for them? Are they a good fit for me? Because if I'm just focusing on getting the deal, they may put my team through all kinds of misery,
Mm-hmm.
is the nicest way I can say it. They're going to be too demanding. They're going to be too bossy. They're not going to be good citizens to deal with. And I'm talking about a very small percentage of the population out there, but we've all dealt with them as clients, right? They just have no personal boundaries and they're me centric and it doesn't matter how much you get paid to work with those clients. It's just not worth it in the end because everybody suffers, the team loses, the business loses, and the client feels like they've got one over on you. And to them, maybe that's satisfying, but to us, it's like there's no joy in our work. So we might as well not even enter into it. I don't know if that answers your
Yep.
question fully, but that's where I'm coming from. we're looking for a reason to do business with them as much as we're looking for a reason not to do business with
Mhm.
them,
Mhm.
and be truthful in the vetting process and look at every angle and say, here's what we think has been missed and here's what we think is done well. And
Yep. All right. So you kind of hit one of mine. My pet going back to pet peeves. It's kind of
mhm,
mindset, but it's also pet peeves. It's a duality here.
mhm.
Is ghosting. Oh my
Oh.
goodness. It drives me crazy. I just had to send an email. It was last night and then a follow-up today to it's a prospecting situation. It's been a long time, months in the coming. And I'm just so frustrated. Like they won't respond. And I literally got to the point because you know how it is. At first you want to be professional and you want to do your follow-up. And then after
Mhm,
like the seventh, eighth, ninth touch, you're beating your head up against the wall. Go, okay, what do I do now? I mean, you're at the point where you don't care anymore because it's been so many months or so many touches.
mhm,
And I basically came to the point. I wish I had my email. I'd read you the language patterns, but basically, it is of the professional written, of course, of the phrase that, hey, I'm a big boy. No's okay. Okay, I'm okay. Literally, I've done this many, many years. If it's not a good fit, the budgets, whatever it is, it's just saying no, it's okay.
mhm,
Right. And I hadn't said that to this point. All my touches have been in the spirit of follow up, even though I don't love those words like checking in, following
mhm,
up. Those are bad sales words, right? But in the spirit of follow up, I'm still not getting that response. So ghosting is one of my biggest pet peeves because to me, the ultimate having a tough conversation is two human beings, and I
mhm,
use the word true up. It's just a true up. Hey, Mike, love your proposal. Your fees are high. We don't like your model, your philosophy. We're going to go in a different direction.
mhm.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for just telling me no. It kind of reminds me of that movie, Jim Carrey, The Yes Man, right? There was such a
Yeah.
good feeling about him saying yes to everybody.
Mhm,
But there's been this movement. I don't know if it's COVID or the last 5 years. I've seen there's seminars where it's the opposite. Say
mhm,
no. Just say, nope, I can't do that. I'm sorry. I can't make that appointment. Nope, I can't meet you for that event on Friday. I got my family. Because if you're so used to saying yes all the time and you're always trying to be there for everybody and be all things to all people, which you and I both know you can't do, sometimes you just got to say no. And you just got to say it's just not going to work. So I'm just
mhm.
curious your take on ghosting because I know we've talked about this. What's your take on that and how do you handle it?
You know how I feel about ghosting. Okay. It's unprofessional, it's impersonal, it's just plain rude. But I understand why people do it. And I'm gonna circle back, probably not one of your favorite phrases, to my comment at the beginning of this is the shortest distance between 2 points is an awkward conversation.
Mhm.
And it's people trying to avoid that awkward conversation and telling you no. And it's okay to tell you no. And it doesn't matter what your reasons are. You could just say, hey, I don't like your haircut. I don't like your shirt. I don't like your company. Or just say, you know what? It's a no for now. Come back next year.
Yep.
It's not that hard to utter those words. Now, in the early days, in the 80s and the 90s, we were taught that no meant maybe, and you needed to overcome that objection and get on to the next one and then overcome that one. And in other words, you're wearing them down. I don't want to wear somebody down. I
Mhm.
want to assuage their fears, show them we've got solutions, show them how we might be better than the professional they're working with, and why it might be a better idea to work with us in the near and distant future. So how do I feel about ghosting? After we go to all that hard work, they've put us through our paces, we've made a proposal, and then we don't hear anything. It shows a huge disrespect for our work that we do. And I just can't get my head around it, no matter how hard I try, why anybody wouldn't just send an email saying, hey, thank you for your time. We've decided to remain where we're at, or we've decided to go another direction, and we really appreciate the effort. Call us next year, or hey, we won't be looking at this again for 24 months. It's just not that hard. And honestly, I feel like email is the next worst thing to ghosting, or a text. It's like
Mhm.
pick up the phone, have a conversation. It's good practice. It's great practice. In fact, you know what? I actually raise my hand and say, hey, I'll break the bad news, not because I like it. I've been doing it for a lot of years. I've had to let people go in my career, and I've had to tell my fair share of vendors, hey, you're not getting this one, and here's why. And they want to argue with me. I say, hey, it doesn't matter. The decision's been made, but the next opportunity will be 12 months from now, 24 months from now, or you'll get the next one.
Mhm.
We'll just keep on going. But it's interesting to see how people take that bad news. The old salesman mentality still exists where they're trying to overcome the objection when the deal has already been made, the
Mhm.
decision's already been made. And I don't like it any more than anybody else, but I'm the first one that'll say, hey, I'll do it. I'll have the conversation. I think it'd be good practice for anybody else out there to make it a point to deliver bad news face to face, or at the very least in a telephone conversation. I don't mean a voicemail. I don't mean an email. I don't mean a text. And I
Mhm.
certainly don't mean disappear. They're
Yeah.
all just, they're way down there on my list.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm glad we're hitting this one. This is big. I know a lot
Yeah.
of people will this will resonate. All right, let's. I want to wrap up with this. This is a thought I have, and I want you to chime in. So years and years ago, gosh, this must have been like '07, '08. This is before Rev was born. He's 16 now. I was doing a seminar with a good friend of mine named Justin Fatika. He's a speaker, author, he's done a lot of stuff. He's got a basketball, kind of like Diaries of Basketball that's going to be with Netflix coming out this year, to be
Hmm.
seen. And just a great guy. He's got this. He had an HBO documentary on him years ago called Hard as Nails. If you all can Google it, Hard as Nails HBO documentary. He was in ministry, youth ministry, and he would go into high schools and talk to the youth from sixth grade, middle school, high school, and he was just fierce about you know being tough. It's kind of like Scared Straight. Remember Scared Straight?
Hmm. Very
It's
well.
that's kind of his mentality. And I saw the documentary and I reached out to him, and we actually created a seminar called Take a Stand. And this is about 2 years we had it running, and we're reinvigorating that. And the whole philosophy of taking a stand, and this is more for like kids and parents, but the philosophy is no different. When you have a belief that you're taking a stand for someone, it's like you're seeing the best in them. It's like a good
Hmm.
coach, right? A good coach sees the best in you, and they're not going to let you be average, whether it's running, giving your efforts, right? That's what a great coach try to maximize what's out of you. A
Hmm.
good parent does the same thing. And what we came up with in our content was the opposite of taking a stand for someone, meaning literally having the tough conversation in a
Hmm.
loving, compassionate way, saying, "Come on, Kevin, you're better than this. If I don't say this to you, who else is going to say it?" Right. The opposite of taking a stand for someone is to sell out. Sell
Hmm.
out means you have no courage. You're going to let that person go down this, mediocre path or failure. Worse yet, in coaching, that's horrible. In parenting, it's horrible. In consulting, it's horrible. Right. But I want you to speak on that a little bit. I know that's a concept we have, the stand versus, selling out. When you have to have those tough conversations, you have this 1,200 words a minute we talk to ourselves, right? That little battle in our mind about, oh gosh, I don't want to offend this person. Oh, I don't want to, lose a relationship. How do you resolve that in your mind when you think about taking a stand for someone? And I know you very well. You're not a sellout kind of guy. You're the guy that's
Hmm.
going to have a tough conversation 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10. Like that's how you lean. That's your genetics. That's your behavior. Plus, I've seen your profile. I know your behavioral profile. You lean that direction. But
Hmm.
there are times humanistically where we stop and think, gosh, maybe there's another way to do it. Or maybe I need to wait and give it a couple times, a couple days, or maybe I just pause on this a little bit. Maybe they'll grow through it. Reconcile that for me. How do you do that?
Well, like I said earlier, my technique 10 and 20 years ago is different than it is today because there was always that propensity to, you didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, you didn't want to jeopardize the deal, you didn't want to be seen as uncaring or like, your word was more important than their decision, but you knew the freight train was coming down the track and they were going to get run over. And so after seeing people get run over by the freight train, a bunch of years ago, and then they looked at me and said, "Why didn't you tell me?" After we'd been told, "No, you're not getting the deal, and
Mhm.
we're going this other direction." And back then my response would have been, "Well, would you have listened to me?" I mean, it's not like it's something you could put your hands on. You can't see the metaphorical train coming down the tracks, right? In the form of massive rate increases, or the contract is lesser than the one that you're presenting, and you're trying to show them why, and they're just not hearing you. So now I feel like it's being afraid. You should always act like you're that's the wrong word, but you should always act in the best interest of that prospect or client and take the highest road and say, here's why you need to go this way instead of that way. And I'm going to show you. And again, you're going to back it up with data because it's not my feeling, it's fact, it's math,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
figures. And this is why it makes sense. In fact, I have a conversation going right this very minute with a large client, and they feel like they want to change their employees' short-term disability plan to another contract type, and it's going to provide a lot less coverage. And I've explained why, and they go, "Oh, no, we've covered that, and this is the same as the current contract." Then it's not, because the rates are 30% less expensive. And the reason they're 30% less expensive is because the coverage is a lot skinnier, without me going into nitty-gritty detail. And so I've told them, look, we can go there, but I think you're going to hear from your employees when they go on claim, they're going to be very upset when they're not getting paid like they were getting paid before. And so we may lose that, but at least I've put it out on the table that I think you're making a mistake, and here's why. Where 10, 15 years ago, I might not have had that conversation, but if I'm going to lose the deal anyway, they might as well hear it from me. And I'll just say, let me know how it works out, because we can't take you there. I was brought in to solve a problem. We solved that problem with this contract. And now you want to turn to another contract that was going to create the problem before that you didn't want to face. All you're doing is looking at dollars and cents and saving your employees money, which I'm sure they'll be grateful for. But when they don't get the benefit they counted on getting, when they're out of work because they broke their elbow or got hit by a car, or, maybe the employee had a baby, it's just being on claim and finding out at that time that the benefits aren't what they used to be is the wrong time to find out. And we don't want that hanging on our coat rack, so to speak, or our hat rack, or just on our reputation. And we put it in writing, hey, this contract is less than, and here's why. And I've had a lot of those conversations over the years, and I felt better, whether I won the business or lost it, that I had that conversation, as opposed to some early in my career where you're just hoping things go right and you didn't say anything, and then it blows up in your face.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you unfortunately learn by not doing, in that case, the hard way, and you have some hard conversations later on where you're getting fired. When I was really young in this business,
Yeah.
you you just had to leave that stone. You got to turn it over, man. You got to be
Yeah.
unafraid.
It's
You
true.
got to say what you have to say.
I always think about the question of what's the cost if I don't? If I don't
Mhm.
say something, if I don't do it, what's going to happen? And this could be something extremely personal. I had some friends right after COVID. They just had a lot of personal things going on in their lives, and multiple friends around were going, "Hey, how's so and so? How's so and so?" And I heard it enough where I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to pick up the phone and check on this person. This is a friend." And I'm thinking, if I don't, I mean, there's 6 people who haven't had the courage to pick up the phone, but I'm going to do that because I don't know what's going on over there, whether it's
Mhm.
personal, marriage, kids, family, whatever. I mean, you know how it was COVID. People are home, they're depressed, they're gaining weight, they're doing all the things that
Mhm.
they're missing connection with people. And I was so happy when I did a few of these conversations. And I'd encourage anybody out there, it's something to do all the time, is reach out to people on your list, like for no good
Mhm.
reason. I call it for no good reason. Come up with a list of like 10 people this week. I'm going to reach out to 10 friends, and I'm not texting, not DMing you on Facebook. I'm picking up the phone, old school. Hey,
Mhm.
Jim, what's up, man? I haven't talked to you in a while. I was thinking about you. I don't need anything. I'm not calling you for a referral. I just was thinking about you and I wanted to give you some love. Give me a call back. Hope you're doing great.
Mhm.
So we get busy, man. You know how it is. If
I
you
do.
don't make the time, what's written is real. Write these things down. There's going to be people in your business, people in your life that sometimes it's not even like you're taking a stand for something extravagant. It's just reaching out to someone and having human connection and saying, "Hey, I was just thinking about you." No, in business, it's no different. I mean, your clients expect to hear from you this time of year, right?
Sure
With
do.
good news or bad news, that's part of your business. It's cyclical. But imagine if, January, March, May, random times of the year, you just pick up the phone for no reason, just to call up a client and say, "Hey, man, I was thinking about you. I just wanted to tell you I appreciate you. I love doing business with you. I've got no bad news, no good news. It was just I want to connect with you." So
Mhm.
I think that's important to highlight. I think that sometimes we forget it. We get busy, and to your point, the values, our families, or the renewal season that is just carving out that little bit of time and writing a goal to connect with people is such an important thing. So, Kevin, I want to wrap it up. Thank you so much, man. You and I could
My
talk for
pleasure.
you and I could talk for hours. You and I know that.
Absolutely. Mhm.
So we're gonna put this out on our social media, LinkedIn, my YouTube channel, etc. So obviously, Kevin, we'll have your links, but LinkedIn's probably the best way to hit you, right? You prefer
Amen.
LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Okay,
LinkedIn for
Kevin.
sure. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you could also go to, Hub International and your, territory of Inland Empire, but it's better if you go to LinkedIn directly. Kevin
Mhm.
Garrett. You can see the spelling right there on the screen. I know you're very big on LinkedIn and stepping up your game. So accepting friends and all that stuff in the spirit of connecting. I know you're good at that. So I just want to say thank you, my friend, for taking the time with me and sharing us the modeling series, what we've done, picking up from the last time we talked.
My pleasure, man. It's great being a part of this forum and being able to share these things. And I know if they're on our minds, I know they're on a lot of other people's minds. And this is just definitely an important topic. People think about it. Sometimes they don't say anything about it, but it's going to do them good to hear these things and know that we're all fighting the same battles, and we're having the same struggles, and how are we resolving those issues? And you know, that's just my blueprint of how I
Yeah,
deal with these things. And I'm always up for hearing anything that's better, new, and different. No matter how long I've been in this business. It's
I
always
love
great
it.
to learn.
I love it, man. All right, man. Well, have a great rest of the day, and we'll catch up this week.
All right, brother, you too.
Okay, you
Take
too.
care.
Bye.